morning, everyone. It's so great to see all the wonderful faces out there. Thanks for taking your time on a Saturday morning to join us. Each one of these ladies are amazing ladies, and we're going to start. I've worked with each of them on one level or the next. This is interesting because I just found out about Dr. Bekou Betts today, that she knows my aunt from Sierra Leone. Because I walked in and she's like, I know you when you were 5 years old. I was like, oh my God, and the face hasn't changed. And she works at my one of my colleges that I went to at Florida Atlantic. So like I said, everybody has a new something that I can relate to here on the panel. But we're looking forward to hearing what you're going to share with us. So welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to thank the Drama Institute for inviting me to participate in this really very important event. You know, the things we're talking about are really close to all of our hearts, and I hope that something will come out of our collaboration today. And I'm very happy to be sitting here and presenting with my sister scholars, and thank you. I'm going to be talking about women who have actually succeeded in making it in STEM, and looking at their own experiences, the challenges they have to face, but how they try to overcome and navigate those challenges so that they can bring about important things that we're talking about in terms of advancing girls in STEM. And I'm looking at science as a development tool in Ghana and how women academic scientists are situated within that. As we all know, African countries are all, like many other societies, are struggling to claim an equal role as partners in the global marketplace in the 21st century. And questions are being asked about, well, what attributes are you bringing to this discourse, such as innovation, an indigenous basis of knowledge, the ability to effectively harness human resources to promote the development of sustainable science and technology in their respective societies. And in any country, really, the ability to produce and convert scientific knowledge into wealth and goods is a significant indicator of what their future is going to be in terms of competing in the global marketplace. And science and technology, the state of it in Africa, cannot meet these challenges right now, but certainly we are working towards that. We do know that many of the high-income countries in the global north account for about 85% of global expenditure on science and technology, and Africa's share is only, perhaps I would say, under 5%, really. And for example, in 2007, research and development expenditures as a percentage of GDP in Ghana was 0.23%, and in Kenya it was 0.42%, and it's much, much higher than that for the global north countries. So in order to be able to overcome these kinds of challenges, political commitment and intervention is necessary in order to provide, whether it's adequate funding, structured support, for research that is going to be socially relevant and sustainable. And in 2003, a number of African governments, through the Africa Union and NEPAD, the New Economic Partnership for Africa, they began to demonstrate some changes in commitment to develop science in Africa. And for example, the African Ministerial Council on Science and Technology was established. Over 40 countries pledged support, $160 million to promote scientific development on the continent. And the areas that they identified were like biodiversity studies, sustainable water and energy systems, which I think is a topic you've covered in your conferences here, and safe development and application of biotechnology. And countries like Mozambique, Rwanda, South Africa, they established ministries of science and technology. Countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Botswana, they developed national science and technology development plans. So, you know, some work is definitely going on in that way. We also know that universities play a very important role in the development of science and technology. And we certainly know that after independence for many countries, universities got very, very much involved in developing human resource capacity. But with all the civil wars and the disasters, the famines and all that have been taking place, and of course in the more recent past, the impact of neoliberal economic reforms, it has tended to undermine their capacity, really, to effectively harness intellectual resources of faculty and students in Africa. And another thing is that there's an increasing reliance of African universities on international donor agencies and research foundations for support, which is very important. We're all very happy about that. But in some ways, it has meant that they cannot steer research in the direction that they want to move in, and or such as, for example, the effective utilization of their indigenous scientific knowledge in the development agendas of their countries, because the donor agencies also have their own agendas. So it becomes a bit difficult relying on donor funding. And where do women come in? Well, women, basically what I'm trying to say is that women constitute an important, essential resource, human resource, in the development of science and technology, but it's not tapped on to the extent that it can. And I'll talk about this in relation to the experiences of Ghanaian women academic scientists. But there are issues when it comes to women and gender. These issues are often marginalized in discourses on higher education. Gender tends to be depoliticized, and what they'll do is disaggregate the statistics by men and women, but you really don't know the particular institutional processes that are shaping the gender outcomes that we're seeing. Gender equality and empowerment is the third of 8 Millennium Development Goals. And education, increasing women's share of wage employment, are critical to this target of eliminating gender disparities. And Naila Kabil, I think she's an economist, talks about how, in a critical analysis of the Millennium Development Goals, she says that it's the social relationships that govern access to the resource in question that will determine the extent to which this potential is realized within a given time frame. So if we're talking about gender disparities, women's empowerment, we need to look at the social relationships which are governing how those relationships are being transformed to empower women. And so I want to look at why women scientists are underutilized as a resource in Ghana and how they're addressing these sorts of issues. And I'm going to talk about how, for example, the political and economic conditions have affected that, how a patriarchal cultural environment also tends to create problems for women in terms of effectively practicing their careers in science as teachers, as researchers. And also I'm interested in looking at what are their perspectives on science, what is the role of science in my own society, and how they've taken advantage of new possibilities to be able to engage in civil society development. In Ghana especially, I'll talk about the science clinics for girls. And then there's also a very popular television show in Ghana on science, and it's a woman that I think recently, I don't know who's doing it right now, but at the time I did the research, there was a woman who was the moderator for this. It was something like Jeopardy, and the whole country was involved in it, but it was about science and popularizing science and getting people interested in it. And this study is just based on a study I did of it's a larger study, but I did study 12 academic women scientists in Ghana, University of Ghana, Cape Coast, and Kwame Nkrumah University, different disciplines in the natural and physical sciences, and different academic ranks. And Ghana, basically, I chose Ghana because Ghana has made a lot of significant efforts recently to develop, in fact, historically, even after independence with Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana actually has a hospital that is just based on indigenous medicine. And you can go there and all the medicines, I mean, they have their Western medical hospitals, of course, but this particular hospital is just devoted to indigenous scientific research and development of medicines and things like that. So they have that as part of their traditions in Ghana. They also have very active women's organizations, and of course the government has done a lot to, it's established a network of 13 research institutions under the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and the universities are all involved in this. So just to talk a little bit about Ghanaian women scientists, there are only about 15% of the faculty in Ghanaian universities, and most of them do not hold terminal degrees, which means that, you know, they don't have PhDs. Kwame Nkrumah University and University of Ghana definitely have a higher percentage of men faculty than women faculty. And women are definitely underrepresented at the level of the deans, the senior academic ranks. They're also subject to sexual harassment and exclusion from old boys networks and opportunities for career advancement, like grants and scholarships and fellowships. And these are all issues which create gender imbalances in effectively being able to do the work that they are doing. I think I'll just move on to, because sometimes I'm not very good at managing my time, and my colleagues have been very good with this today, so I don't want to disgrace myself. So I think I'll just go on and talk about what are some of the findings from my research. You know what time I have?
You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes left? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right. Well, what are their perspectives on the role of science? Well, most of the women talked about the fact that science should have a broader social purpose designed to foster social change and development in their society. And many of them talked about how science should be designed to benefit the people. Science and technology, to me, as zoology said, is the bedrock for any national development. In Ghana, there are a lot of scientists doing relevant research, but most of the nation does not see the benefit. And there's a gap between research and the end product. And they want to see the government doing work that would help to change this kind of situation. They also talk about the need for more indigenous knowledge research and to integrate these practices into development for commercial purposes, because they're aware that indigenous scientific knowledge is a valuable resource that should be used, and it's been appropriated and marginalized by a lot of the industrial capitalist countries in the global north, and they're not really harnessing. When African resources are being harnessed, it's not always for the benefit of Africa. So I was happy to hear about the rice, and that a Nigerian has discovered the gene for the rice, and that Nigeria is no longer going to be importing rice. These are the kinds of things that we be doing, because these women talk about questions about who is benefiting from this knowledge, how are they going to use it in terms of resource distribution, who is the legitimate owner of these products. They also talk about, in terms of their ability to practice science, many of them talk about how the work environment has become very competitive now. It emphasizes performance and competition, and this tends to benefit men more than women, because women tend to be in the lower academic ranks and in the more vulnerable disciplines. At the same time, they're the ones who are taking responsibilities for the home when you have all these neoliberal economic, what do we call it now? And the structural adjustment programs, right? It's the women usually who have to take on a lot of those responsibilities in terms of when the state begins to withdraw public services. And so they find that they're teaching more, they're spending more time mentoring students, and they're not having enough time to do their research. And so they were frustrated about these sorts of things. Another issue they talked about was the lack of funding for research, and that under the new economic reforms, they have to produce research publication and grants, and there are lots of constraints and barriers they're facing. And I'll just end up by, they talked also about, I'll just leave that. And so just finally, I'll talk about what are the new possibilities. And there are two things that I just wanted to share. They have, in Ghana, they have what they call the science clinics for girls. And these clinics now, these clinics now have become widespread in West Africa, definitely. And they're promoting girls' access, participation, and retention in science subjects. And women scientists are the ones who are mentoring these girls, teaching them through non-governmental organizations, and is continuing to help these girls into science-related careers. In the summer, they'll go and do some work with a scientist in the lab, or they'll go into industry and work with a woman scientist there. And the other one I talked about was this, the National Science Quiz Program in Ghana. And it's a private sector initiative, but it's to encourage science literacy in Ghana. And the quiz program has become a very popular form of entertainment, and viewers are drawn from all sectors of the population. And one of the more popular segments is the focus on science in everyday life. And how do you integrate science into the culture and popularize it in ways that will demystify science really, and raise public awareness of the importance of science and technology, especially for the youth, so they can see it as a potential career path for them. And I find that a lot of the girls in Ghana who study science, they are the ones who have the opportunity to come abroad, and they get scholarships to go to Dartmouth College and Yale and all of this. And that science clinic has been able to give them the groundings to be able to pursue science. And so by applying their intellectual insights to civic engagement programs like these science clinics and the quiz, the popular quiz for girls, Ghanaian women scientists have shown that they're essential components of the resources and new capacity needed to produce and disseminate science and technology knowledge in the wider community and Ghana as a whole. So I'm just going to finish there. So